Evidence 3. Channel Tunnel. The Channel Tunnel is the longest undersea tunnel in the world. The section under the sea is 38 kilometers long. The three tunnels, each 50 kilometers long, were bored at an average of 40 meters below the seabed and link Folkestone in Kent to Cockles in Pas de Calais. Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew was at the time of its occurrence in August 1992 the most destructive hurricane in United States history. It caused major damage in the Bahamas and Louisiana, but the greatest impact was in South Florida, where it made landfall at Category 5 hurricane intensity on the Stafford-Simpson hurricane scale, with the wind speeds up to 165 meters per hour. Oklahoma City bombing. A truck bomb explosion outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City left 168 people dead and hundreds more injured. The blast was the set-off by anti-government militant Timothy McVeigh, who in 2001 was executed for his crimes. His co-conspirator, Terry Nichols, received life in prison. Olympic Park bombing was a terrorist bomb attack on the Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta, Georgia, on July 27 during the 1996 Summer Olympics. The blast directly killed one person and injured 111 others. Another person later died of a heart attack. It was the first of four bombings committed by Eric Robert Rudolph. Security guard Richard Jewell discovered the bomb before detonation and cleared most of the spectators out of the park. Colombian High School Massacre. On April 20th, 1999, two teens went on a shooting spree at Colombian High School in Littleton, Colorado, killing 13 people and wounding more than 20 others before turning their guns on themselves and committing suicide. There was a speculation that the two committed the killings because they had been bullied, were members of a group of social outcasts that was fascinated by goth culture, or had been influenced by violent video games and music. However, none of these theories was never proven. Globalization. Globalization is a process of interaction and integration among the people, companies, and governments of different nations, a process driven by international trade and investment and aided by information technology. This process has effects on the environment, on culture and political systems, on economic development and prosperity, on a human physical well-being in societies around the world. Globalization implies the opening of local and nationalistic perspectives to a broader outlook of an interconnected and interdependent world with free broader outlook of an interconnected and interdependent world with free transfer of capital goods and services across national frontiers. However, it does not include unhindered movement of labor, and as suggested by some economists, may hurt smaller or fragile economies if applied indiscriminately. Terrorism. Terrorism is not new, and even though it has been used since the early times of recorded history, it can be relatively hard to define terrorism. Legal definition of terrorism: the unlawful use or threat of violence, especially against the state or the republic, as a politically motivated means of attack or coercion. Terrorism consists of criminal activity. There is no single definition of terrorism, since it encompasses a range of activity, all designed to intimidate and instill fear. However, one well-known definition of terrorism is in the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Policy and Counterterrorism Guidelines. The definition states that terrorism is a violent act or an act dangerous to human life in violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. Unipolar world. Unipolarity is used to describe the power structure when one superpower dominates alone. The end of the Cold War meant that the previous decade's superpower rivalry now had ended. There was no longer the traditional East versus West conflict, at least not the way it had been earlier in the 20th century. The United States surfaced as the sole dominating power in world politics as there were no real challengers to their hegemonic position. This allowed greater room for the superpower to maneuver and to get involved in international issues that not necessarily coincided with national interest. We can describe this new political situation as being unipolar. Digital era. The digital era is characterized by technology which increases the speed and breadth of knowledge turnover within the economy and society. Evolutionary theory, as an explanation of the system we live in, states that sustainability relies on knowledge turnover in parts of the system which are relatively stable. Knowledge turnover is low, and new variation, when produced, is rarely retained. In other, less stable parts of the system, faster knowledge turnover is advantageous as new knowledge is produced more frequently, allowing for adaptation to the changing surrounding environment. Mixing and matching rates of knowledge turnover makes for a dynamic but everlasting world. The digital era can be seen as a development of an evolutionary system in which the knowledge turnover is not only very high, but also increasingly out of the control of humans, marking it at a time in which our lives become more difficult to manage. Why did globalization emerge? It emerged from the intersection of four interrelated sets of communities of practice: academics, journalists, publishers or editors, and librarians. They note that the term was used in education to describe the global life of the mind, in international relations to describe the intention of the European common market, and in journalism to describe how the American Negro and his problem are taking on a global significance. In most cases, what caused the terrorist attack of 20th century? The government is responsible for them because of the different ideas that the people have with it. How does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? It is much related because when this war ended because of Russia lost, so no other country could fight with the USA. How has the digital era influenced today's society? It has influenced mostly in a good way because people has grown in a mentally way very much. But as all things, it also influences society in a bad way because some people starts using it badly, and that makes more and more people using it that way too.